afternoon, everyone. It is January 15, 2023. It is Sunday. The 2022 college football season is a wrap. James, how are you doing today, bud?
Any better be a crime?
Uh, you
It's
know,
just, it's weird. It's finally over. It just seems like we just started. Now we're on the back end of it. It's just crazy.
yeah, I mean this season seemed to fly by, and I got to admit, I enjoyed the whole thing till the very end.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I
You know,
agree.
me and you sent me that tweet about the guy that said, let's be honest, Georgia's won two titles in a row, but you take away the Jamison Williams injury and you take away the Marvin Harrison injury, and do they win either game? I mean, I don't know. I
Yeah.
don't know. I mean that's it's a joke, and it's kind of humorous, but it's also got a little truth behind it. I think
Well, I
with
mean,
that statement.
I keep going back to the Ohio State Georgia game and take nothing away from Georgia. I mean, they got a quality program there, but I mean, no JSN, no Marvin Harrison Jr. When you look the last quarter and a half, you're playing a receiver at running back, and you still had to have a missed field goal wide left at the end of the game to beat them. I mean, CJ Stroud, he's a good quarterback, but he ain't a freaking miracle worker. I mean, he can't throw the ball to himself. I mean, that's
No,
why losing a guy like JSN, I mean, a JSN type of guy would have. I mean, you look at those crossing routes, and they were really targeting Keely Ringo. I mean, honestly, I keep seeing people's draft stock of Keely Ringo go up, and I'm like, I don't know if I play him at corner in the NFL. I think I play him at safety if I do. Wouldn't
I
you?
mean, it's tough to cover these guys from
Oh
Ohio
yeah,
State. I mean, it's easier said than done. So, am I going to rip him apart for that one game? Not really, but as a whole, I see some question marks in his
yeah,
coverage ability, but all I've heard all year is how great this Georgia defense is, and how dominant they are, and how they're one of the greatest defenses in the history, and all this stuff, and how they just reloaded. Well, the Ohio State Buckeyes ripped their ass apart. I mean, C.J. Stroud threw for 350 yards and 4 touchdowns. He averaged over 10 yards a pass. Not to mention, you know, he ran the ball on him. I
yeah.
mean, he had several runs, which I've never seen him do. And, I got to give CJ a lot of credit. He
Yeah.
stepped up big time in this game. There's a lot of people still questioning him for what reason, I don't know. But there were some people that were still wanting to see more out of him and wanting to see a big performance on a big stage. And he delivered. I mean, even after Harrison went down,
Yeah.
he was figuring out ways to get the ball down the field. I mean, that run at the end to set the field goal up, that to me was him saying, I'm going to go and win this game. And he nearly did. My question to you, James, and this is something that, I'm not going to really harp on it because I'm not the asshole fan who rips on Ryan Day's play calling, but it does, at least it does at least, allow us to ask the question, what were your thoughts on the play calling after the CJ Stroud run? He got him down there on the borderline of field goal range. I mean, he tried to throw it.
Yeah.
So it's not like he was being conservative. Me and you talked about the actual call, and you didn't like, throwing it, to the receiver that he chose, and maybe the route. But I want to get your thoughts again on that combination after the run.
Honestly, I would have kept throwing the ball, to tell you the truth. I mean, when you're down to that kind of running back situation, the only person I'd want to have run, I mean, granted, it's easy to play Monday morning quarterback where you look at everything after the fact, but I mean, you had so little depth at the running back position. Why even try to run it? I mean, I like the slant play, but I would have had Ibuka be the slant guy because once again, who are they going after? Ringo. They were targeting Ringo every single time they turned around. And I got to give Monken credit in the game against TCU because he you could tell they game planned very well. They took TCU's offense and put it right back at them. They made a point of making Bowers a central focus of that offense right off the bat. And say what you will about the little engine that could, man, Stetson Bennett just. I went from thinking going into that game, this is going to be the last time we're going to see Stetson Bennett. I think somebody is going to have him as a backup on their roster next year in the NFL. I mean, the guy just knows how to win.
I wouldn't be shocked to see him start in the NFL. I got to be honest, all I did was buy into the discouragers and jump on the bandwagon of, oh, he's not that good. Oh, if he was on any other team, he wouldn't, do this. He's, a product of the system, whatever you want to say. I got to be honest, none of it's true. You can go on and say whatever you want to about the kid, but if you didn't watch the Buckeyes game in the second half where he put up 18 points in the fourth quarter, he had the one interception, but besides that, the game was completely flawless. He had 23 of 34, 400 yards passing, almost 12 yards. I gave CJ Stroud his credit. Well, Stetson Bennett's numbers were even better. So I've got no doubts about this kid anymore, and I think he can pretty much do whatever he wants. If he wants to be an NFL quarterback, hell, why not? He's better than Kyler Murray, in my opinion, and Kyler Murray's got $250 million. So,
I mean, that guy has just lost the locker room completely. But, I mean, you get back – I mean, when I heard people down south talking about that, Georgia played a C-plus game. I'm sorry. When you throw for almost 400 yards, you're not throwing a C-plus game. I mean, name me another game where they threw for 400 yards all year long.
I didn't see one. They played great. They played great. And then the the championship game, he did what he had to do. I mean, the numbers weren't gaudy, but that's just because they dominated so much. I mean, it was like it was perfect football. I mean, he did exactly what he was supposed to do. He threw 4 touchdowns. I mean, everything they did was unbelievable. And like you said, Brock Bowers was the big difference in this game. I mean, the reason Georgia blew them out was because they got started early and often throwing the ball to number 19 and 7 catches for 152 yards, 22 yards a catch for a tight end. I mean, this guy was the best player on the football field.
I want to go back to the Ohio State game because there were many times I forgot about Brock Bowers because he was such a non-factor in that game, which means Knowles must have had something dialed up pretty good because name me a time where you don't. I mean, heck, they'll do end arounds to a tight end in Bowers in the Monken system. And honestly, name me other time you've seen end arounds from a tight end. Never. I mean, that's why I'm like, he's got one more year. He goes pro. I think he's a top 5 pick. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah, he's definitely a early first rounder, especially the way that the tight end position has been glorified in the NFL and the strength of the importance of the position. I think he's definitely a top 10 pick, maybe top 5. I don't know. We'll see. The thing that sucks with him is that he has to go back and play college football again because
he's ready.
He should be allowed to go to the NFL right now. All he's doing by playing next year is risking injury. And this is a kid right here. You talk about Jackson Smith and Jigba and whether or not he should have come back and played last year and what, some people questioning his desire to play and all that. Well, if Brock Bowers decided to sit out next year, I would have no problem with it.
It was funny you mentioned that because I never even thought about that until literally just before you brought that up, and I was thinking the same damn thing. If
he came out next year and said, "I've hired, an agent, I've decided to work out on my own. I'll be in the draft, next season, but I'm not going to risk injury," I would sit there and go, okay, I have no problem with this because all he can do by playing this year is hurt his stock or get injured and completely kill himself. He's done so much and shown me, so much of his game that I'm ready to put him at the next level. And I don't need to really see anything else from him.
Oh God, no. I mean, there is no more upside. I mean, you've seen enough film on this kid to know, he was the focal point of that offense, plain and simple. I mean, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it, much like Jalen Carter was the focal point of that defense. So,
Yeah, no, he was legit. And I got to ask you, I've got my thoughts, but I want to get your thoughts on what exactly happened to TCU. I'll just throw mine out there real quick. I think they got worn out. They're you think about their team down the stretch. They played a tough game against was it Kansas State?
yeah.
Where they lost in the championship game, correct?
Yeah.
The 31-28. That was a hard fought game. Remember how Max Dugan at the end of the game was like laying on the ground and had to be helped off the field because he was so exhausted. And then they came back and played another game and beat Michigan 51-45 in a thriller. And to me, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but it just looked to me like they were just done. They were physically, emotionally spent. They were drained, and they looked to me like they just had nothing left.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I looked at that game, and I saw serious problems with their defensive personnel running a 3-3-5 against the 12 personnel that Georgia's going to run with both Washington and Bowers at tight end. I think if Washington didn't play, I think we'd be having a little bit different conversation, but I still think Georgia wins big. But I mean, heck, you go back to it. What does Michigan do really well? They run 12 personnel, but you lost Eric All, the All-American tight end, to a back injury, and then Schooner gets hurt on the first drive. So all you had was Loveland left, and they had to bail out on their 12 personnel. And I mean, granted, I will be the first to say it. The Georgia's tight end personnel versus Michigan is far superior between Washington, Gilbert, and Bowers versus those three. But I mean, it was just they didn't have the personnel to match up with them. And once they got down, it was over. I mean, they choked them out quick. And you could tell TCU just didn't want to be there halfway through the second quarter. They just wanted the game over.
After it was 33-7, it kind of looked to me like they quit. To be honest with you. And I give, he was my coach of the year and should be everybody's coach of the year. So I'm not saying it's necessarily the coach's fault, but it looked to me like the players completely and utterly quit.
Yeah.
After it hit 33-7.
I mean, no Kendre Miller. You had to play Dear Mercado exclusively at running back. Who, I mean, let's be honest, Miller is a hell of a running back. They shut down Quentin Johnston really quick. I mean, they took basically Georgia took TCU and put it back at them. They were running up tempo, which Georgia does not really do.
Yeah, Quentin Johnson, who finished the season with over 1,000 yards, 6'4", 215. He had one catch for 3 yards.
Yeah,
one catch for 3 yards, and that's pretty tough to do. How did they shut down this offense that's been able to score points all year? I mean, Georgia's defense couldn't really stop Ohio State all day, yet, they completely shut down. Except for that one drive, TCU could do nothing.
Well, I mean, even on that one, it was a busted coverage when they got that 60-yard pass. Honestly, having no Miller there really hurt them because they really rely on that running game to set up the passing plays. And Miller was really an underrated running back all year long. I mean, unless you lived in or watching Big 12 football pretty exclusively, his name wasn't being brought up in the same category of Bijan Robinson. And let's be honest, you look at the numbers, he was pretty damn similar to Bijan Robinson. So,
yeah, and this offense really, if you go back and look at the season that TCU had, they scored. The only game that they scored under 20 points was when they beat Texas. 17-10. And that was a game where, they kind of had the lead and it seemed to me like they pretty much took the foot off the gas and just were trying to run the clock out and play keep away and that type of thing. But other than that game, there really wasn't another one. I mean, the Baylor game where they won 29-28, that was the only other game they were even in the 20s. Yeah. So to me, it was just kind of shocking to see them not be able to do anything. And I think that was where you saw how good Georgia's defense was. You watched the Ohio State game, and like I mentioned before, I was ripping on their defense. I was just saying that they didn't play great in that game, and they got exposed.
They really played poorly. I mean, yeah.
And it wasn't that they're not good. It was that Ohio State's offense is good, and that Ryan Day had a great game plan, and really took it to them. But this Georgia defense rebounded tenfold in that national championship game.
I mean, you look at that Ohio State offense, you're going to see 2 tackles, a center, a quarterback, a receiver, all get drafted probably in the first 3 rounds, with the majority of them being in the first 2.
Well, and, why don't we go ahead and start talking about that, because that was kind of where we were going to go next. And you're right. The Buckeyes have already had several players declaring for the draft. As you mentioned, both tackles, Paris Johnson Jr., who I think is a first round draft pick. He didn't allow a sack all season long. I see Paris Johnson going early. The other tackle, DeJuan Jones, he's going. He will probably be, first or second round pick. I mean, the guy's 6'8", 360 pounds. I mean, there's no doubt that he's going to get drafted in the first round, I think, too. And then as you said, the center is going as well. We've got Jackson Smith-Njigba has declared. I believe Ronnie Hickman has declared. Almost all the Buckeyes that we figured were going to go this year have declared, yet the quarterback still has not. And a lot of people are making a big deal about it. I'm really not. I think he's just, wants to go through the process, and just before he makes a final decision, he wants to make sure he's 100% sure. I don't really 100% know why he's doing this, but I still think he's going to go to the pros. I think he's going to go declare for the draft. But what do you think the holdup is with CJ Stroud right now?
I think he can, therefore he will. I mean, you got to remember, he's got till the end. He's got till tomorrow to declare. And I was just sitting there looking it up. I mean, is there still a supplemental draft where if he decides to come out, later, he could be part of the supplemental draft?
I believe, that's kind of a difficult question. I think, I don't know, really. I don't think that's really something he's thinking about. I think he's either going to do it or he's not. I still think he is going to. I just don't think he can really pass up that money when you've already solidified your position.
Yeah.
Would I love for him to come back? Yeah. That would be great, but I don't see it happening. I mean, you're turning down north of $36 million by staying in school. Now, this is a kid that's already gotten paid. I mean, he's got a nice ass car. He's got a Maserati and he's got a deal with like the Maserati dealership in Columbus. So, he's got a lot of NIL money. He probably makes close to his valued at over $3 or $4 million already.
Yeah.
So he has money, but do you want to risk the injury? He's seen all these other guys. He saw what happened to Jackson Smith-Njigba. He saw both his running backs being banged up. That's something we didn't really talk about. The national championship game was, national championship semifinal. Travion Henderson and Mayan Williams, neither one of them played. So he's seen a lot of injuries come down around him. I just don't think that he would risk it, in my opinion.
No, I agree. I think at the end of the day, he's going to declare 100%.
So we'll see.
I mean, he could go as high as 2, honestly. I mean, he's going to go high. I mean, I don't see him go past 5, to tell you the truth.
Well, there's so many teams that need a quarterback and need a quarterback bad. I think that there's going to be a lot of moving around in this draft, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind, Chicago Bears are trading their draft pick. It's not a question of if, it's where.
They need to. They need way more than – they don't need a quarterback, first off. And second off, they need so much besides the quarterback position that they need to they need to stockpile picks. So yeah, I agree with you. I think the Bears are going to trade back, and there's so many teams that need a quarterback. There's going to be people moving up. So I think he's
Yeah.
I think he's a top 5 pick guaranteed. I think he needs to make the move. But let's talk about some other guys that have already declared that maybe shouldn't have. I mean, I'm going through this list. There was a lot of guys that we expected, the Jalen Carters of the world. Lots of guys that we thought should do it and figured they would. One question about a guy that declared that I wanted to talk to you about is Jahmyr Gibbs, the Bama player. What the hell happened with Jahmyr Gibbs at the end of the season?
Yeah, I was wondering that too as well, because it seemed like more and more he was disappearing from that offense. I mean, you look at the Tennessee game, when they played Alabama in Knoxville, I mean, the second half, you question if he was even on the field. Like he was a focal point of that offense. In the second half, he just disappeared more and more and more. I did not get it.
Yeah, well, it's not like he wasn't good. That's why I didn't understand. I didn't know if he did something or got in trouble or got into a fight with the coach. I mean, I have no idea, but it was really weird not seeing him out there. I mean, he had 24 carries for 103 yards and 3 touchdowns and wasn't really playing a lot at the end of the game in that Tennessee game. And then down the stretch, it was a lot more of Jace McClellan and Ja'Cory Brooks and other people getting carries, even, handing it off to the running backs. I mean, I just didn't understand why he wasn't getting to play, and I wasn't surprised to see him going in the draft. I figured he was either going to do that or transfer maybe, just because it seemed like there had been something happened there. But Jalen Hyatt, from that same game we were just talking about, the Tennessee receiver who won the Biletnikoff, he's gone. He's declaring for the draft. We heard about that, before the bowl game. I think he's going to be tight. One of the top wide receivers taken. Michael Mayer, the guy that everybody thinks is the second best tight end, is going. But, what I want to focus on right now is the guys that I think maybe I was surprised by going. And I think, in my opinion, don't really have the ability to get drafted. I mean, the biggest one to me is Anthony Richardson.
Yes.
This is a guy that I look at as a dude that has a lot of talent, but has done absolutely nothing in college football. So I'm not sure who's told him that going to the NFL is what he should do, because I don't know where he fits in the draftable range. I know some of these guys, prognosticators, are high on him, but as we've seen, most of the time those dudes are wrong. I think Anthony Richardson's making a big-time mistake.
I couldn't agree with you more, honestly. And granted, if you got a chance to take the money, take it. But honestly, I can see him slipping farther and farther back in the draft. I mean, granted, everybody overdrafts quarterbacks so much, but the kids, you look at it from a pure athletic talent standpoint. Oh, he's legit. But quarterback talent, for as many good games I've seen him have, I've seen him have some real stinkers too as well.
Yeah, I have no clue what he thinks he's doing by going in the draft. I wouldn't draft that guy.
I wouldn't either.
As I was talking about earlier, I might sign him as a undrafted free agent and put him as an arm in my camp and see, if he could beat somebody out to win the third job or something. But I don't see him being anywhere close to being ready to play in the NFL. The other one we talked about was Zach Evans. I think he probably could stand to play another one, but at the same time with him, he's a running back. So if someone told him that he might get drafted, I don't really have a problem with him going because of the fact that he, the position that he plays.
His whole recruitment makes me shy away from him to begin with, because he couldn't. Everybody was comparing him to being the next Melvin Gordon. And he just, time and time again, heck, he got suspended in high school football. He was originally going to commit to this school, pops out, decides not to go there, then decides to go to another school, gets there, and then decides, I don't like it here, transfers to TCU, and then transfers to freaking Ole Miss. I mean, it just seems like this guy is just jumping time and time again, and the talent's real. It's just, what do you get with this kid? He just seems very unstable in his overall demeanor as a whole as a player. So
yeah, he's a good athlete, but yeah, I've got a lot of question marks about him and his decision making. I didn't really understand why he wanted to go to TCU in the first place. I mean, I know he's from Texas. I believe he went to high school at North Shore in Houston.
Yep.
But TCU's not really where I saw him headed, especially with the offer list he had. But he chose to go there and leaves, after a year, not even a year. And then he's at Ole Miss. So I don't know. I mean, he had a decent season at Ole Miss. I mean, you talked about he eclipsed 900 yards rushing. He had, I think, about 8 or 9 touchdowns. So he had some production, and that's why I don't really have a problem with him declaring for the draft. It might be the best place for him, honestly. But I do think the Texas A&M running back, that's the guy I would, the Pittsburgh running back.
Oh, 100%. I would take honestly, Achane, I'm high on. I think if he has good combine, I think his draft stock is going to explode. Considering, I mean, Texas A&M's offense was a freaking disaster area, and he was the sole bright spot.
Yeah, it didn't slow him down at all. So either the Pittsburgh, I could see the Pittsburgh or the Texas A&M running back, or both of them going in the first 3 rounds.
Yeah,
I think it's a good move for both of them to go. I've seen enough out of them to. But the other one that I guess has NFL talent, but I think is going to drop is Boutte out of LSU. I mean, this guy comes out, announces that he's coming back. That he wants to play another season for the LSU Tigers. We all thought he was going to declare or transfer, and he comes out with this huge press conference and tells everybody he's coming back to school. And then now he declares for the draft and says he's out. This guy was just kind of an enigma all season long. Now I know that the quarterback position at LSU wasn't a real strength as far as the passing game goes, but very disappointing season for this kid. Honestly, I think he should have gone back for another year. What do you think about Boutte?
Honestly, if I didn't go back, I would have transferred out because, this year showed nothing. Absolutely. I mean, he went from probably being a top 12 pick to, unless he combines really well, he could be 3rd round.
Well, and that's what I was thinking. I was like, if this kid were to come back and go to USC, he'd probably be a top 10, 15 pick. I mean, this season was just such a disaster. 48 catches, 538 yards, and 2 touchdowns for a guy who was supposed to be their number 1 weapon. And then, he had the injury the year before. So you got the injury history, you've got the, kind of questionable decision making.
Yeah.
And then, the lack of production to me is a question mark. Who else? I'll give you my one other guy that I've got on my list here, and that's Bigsby out of Auburn.
Really?
Another guy that I like, but I don't know. I just don't. I mean, I think he should probably declare for the draft because he's a running back, and if you could possibly get drafted, you should go. But he's just a guy that I'm not as high on as everybody else, I guess.
With him, I think it's a smart move on his side because he is truly an untraditional running back to what you see today. He's more of throwback to like the 90s, early 2000s, where he's bigger. But I mean, his shelf life in the NFL is going to be a lot smaller too, as well. I could see how. I mean, would it be better for him to come back? Absolutely. I think it would improve his draft stock, but I could see him going out. There's 3 guys I've got on my list that you haven't talked about yet. 2 are from the same school, and that is the receiver Sam Jones and Bryce Ford Wheaton from West Virginia. I mean, truly very athletic players, but questionable hands. I mean, I've never seen so many times where they were just simple drop balls that they had. But I mean, from a pure athletic standpoint, absolutely. But, you could run a 4.40, but if you can't catch something, what good are you as a receiver? And another guy is Raheem Jarrett out of Maryland. I look at him and I'm like, athletically, absolutely, this kid's the real deal. But I mean, he can't stay on the field and be healthy at all. I mean, the best comparison is a kid that went to the same school from an athletic standpoint is Stephon Diggs. I mean, Stephon Diggs was hurt constantly at Maryland.
Yeah.
And then he got drafted in the 5th round by the Vikings, and look where he is today. Now, Raheem Jarrett is unbelievably athletic. I mean, you're talking about a supreme talent at receiver. He's got to stay healthy. And I think him staying back for another year could have helped him out a little bit more. But, I mean, if he wants to go, he's got to go.
Yeah, I think with him, I think the injuries played a part in it. I think that's one of the reasons he decided to declare was, he hasn't been able to stay healthy. I think he's worried if he went back for another year, he would get hurt again, possibly. And he just wants to cash out on his success, and his talent. I guess more, it's kind of about his ceiling, I think, is what will draw people to him. And there's been a lack of consistency with him staying healthy and consistency with him putting up numbers, but the athleticism is there, and I kind of understand it just from the sense of he has been hurt a lot, so I think he wants to go and get it while he can. But once again, 471 yards and 3 touchdowns.
Yeah,
not a great game, and I know he was hurt, but he still played in 11 games, and it's not like their quarterback sucked. The quarterback had some good games.
Tua's kid brother was legit. I mean,
Yeah.
I think people need to talk about him more and more. Is there anybody in here on this list that intrigues you as far as them declaring that they could go higher than people think they will?
Yeah, there's a couple. The only other one I wanted to talk about that I think was kind of a mistake was obviously the kid from BYU, the quarterback.
Oh, Jaren Hall. Absolutely.
Yeah, Jaren Hall. I don't know where he's getting his information. I mean, he had some moments this year where I watched him and saw him and was like, this kid is legit. I like what I'm seeing. And then he kind of fell off big time towards the end of the season. I mean, with the BYU kind of went as he went.
Yeah.
And as his play started to suffer, they started to fall apart. So that one to me is a big question mark. But you mentioned it before, Luke Weipler, the center from Ohio State. This is a kid who's only a redshirt sophomore and not really getting a ton of talk because he's a center. Yeah. But I think he is a potential 2nd or 3rd round pick and could be a guy that could start right away. One dude I wanted to ask you about, obviously Deuce Vaughn, I think is a kid that some people underrate just because of his size. But I think he can be a really good NFL football player, and I think made the right decision going about that. What about the kid from Penn State, the sophomore wide receiver, Parker Washington? What do you think about him, and do you think he made the right decision going to the draft?
I was shocked, honestly. I mean, I mean, do I think he's good? Yeah, but he needs more development. He's not like Hamlin, where Hamlin was just so freaking fast. I think this kid's got potential, but I think honestly, if he stayed for another year and played under Drew Aller, I think his numbers would be greater, and I think his draft stock would be much higher. I'm really kind of shocked he jumped in. I mean, granted, the receiver draft isn't like holy crap crazy like it's been in years past. So maybe there's a supply and demand issue on that fact. You're talking about Deuce Vaughn. Honestly, I think he's going to get drafted a lot higher than people think he will because he still fits in that Darren Sproles, Austin Eckler kind of mindset where, people like make shots at him about his size. But, think about it. When your offensive linemen are 6'4" or greater, and you've got a running back at 5'5", you better hit your hole. because if you don't, you're not going to see him in the backfield. You better hit the hole, and if not, you're in trouble. And I could see from a fantasy perspective, especially in PPR leagues, Deuce Vaughn could be a solid gold type of player.
Yeah, I agree. That's why I brought him up. I just like what I'm seeing, and I think he's a guy that everybody wants to compare him to Darren Sproles because
Yeah,
went to the
K-State
same they went to the same
size.
school and the size. But I Deuce Vaughn is more of a downhill runner to me than Darren Sproles was. Darren
Correct.
Sproles was more of a scat back kind of water bug type dude. Where I see Deuce Vaughn, man, he can bring the lid, and I think he's just more of an every down back in my opinion. I mean, he carried the load.
That's
for
what
Kansas
Austin
State.
Eckler, I think, is a better comparison to him.
Yeah,
I think he's got to put on some size, but absolutely. There's a couple other guys I'm intrigued by in this draft. One is
underclassmen, you mean?
Yeah, that declared. There is the safety out of what's his name? Brandon Joseph, the safety out of Notre Dame. He was the All-American at Northwestern, transferred to Notre Dame. This kid's a legit safety. I mean, very legit. He's not being talked about as much as he was in the past, but this kid is crazy good. And on top of that, Nick Herbig, the linebacker out of Wisconsin, honestly, I see a lot of TJ Watt in him. And I think you get a system where you got linebackers really blitzing from the sides. I think he'd be a perfect fit in that set.
Yeah, I kind of like the linebacker out of NC State, Drake Thomas.
Oh, yes.
6 feet,
Agreed.
240. Kid not really getting a ton of talk, but somebody who I really like. I mean, he's had almost 100 tackles 2 years in a row. He's played 4 years at North Carolina State. I know he's only listed as a junior, but he's actually – everybody forgets the 2020 season didn't count for some reason, which is throwing everything off, in my opinion. It's confusing the hell out of me how this season was played, but doesn't count. But yeah, I like this kid. I like him as a linebacker. He's someone that kind of jumped off the tape. You mentioned the safety out of Notre Dame. I mean, I like his intangibles, but he's not a kid that jumps off the tape at me.
Yeah.
Someone that jumps off the tape at me is Tyjae Spears, the running back at Tulane.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Unbelievable. I mean, the way this kid sometimes is truly targeted by the defense, but can still, get yards and make plays. And I just, even against the good, the best teams they played and the good teams they played, he really showed up, in my opinion, on all those games. I love, obviously, Bijan Robinson. I would take him in a second if I needed a running back. I will go through each position one at a time and each give our favorites, but he's probably my favorite running back. Some guys that I think are really good to talk about. Obviously, I like Joey Porter, the junior.
Yeah.
I think he's got everything you need from the corner position. I would feel comfortable taking him as one of my first picks in the first or second round, honestly. And some people don't have him projected that high, but I like him. What do you think about Eli Ricks, the LSU transfer to Alabama kid who's now coming out? Are you high on him?
I'm not high on him. I think he's one of those guys. I think his workouts is going to dictate a lot of what's going to happen. Do I think he's good? Yeah, but do I think he is one of those outstanding corners that you've seen out of the SEC as of late, like a Patrick Surtain? No. Or Diggs' kid brother that's plays for the Cowboys. I don't think he's got that kind of skill. But it'll be interesting to see how he not only interviews, but how he works out during when you're getting up to the draft.
Yeah, and one more guy that I want to talk to you about before we move on to a different topic is the only other quarterback that we haven't talked about, and that is the Stanford kid.
Oh, Tanner McKee?
Tanner McKee.
Yeah.
2,900 yards, 13 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. Let's be honest, a horrible season, which got their coach who's been there for 20 years pretty much forced to resign. Is this a kid that you see as a high draft pick?
I do. I truly do. This kid's has some real talent. and was probably one of the few bright spots on that Stanford offense. Plus, I mean, they run a pro style offense. So really him coming in and understanding progressions, he'll be farther along, kind of like you saw with Dylan Mills this year for the Houston Texans, who, started a majority of the season, even though he, was a rookie quarterback. I mean, cerebrally, this kid's got it. It's just
Who?
I'm talking about Tanner McKee.
No, you're talking about Davis Mills?
Davis Mills. I say Dylan Mills,
Yeah.
Davis Mills. Davis.
Yeah, no, he wasn't a rookie though. This was his second year now.
Okay, yeah. Tanner McKee's been there 2 years now. Yeah, sorry, my fault.
Yeah, no. I don't know. I kind of see Davis Mills as far as a guy who, I mean, they don't have similar games, but I just think he's kind of overrated. He's not my favorite kid in this draft is my only thing. And everybody talked about how they liked Davis Mills and thought he was so great, and Houston stuck with him. And I don't know. I'm just not high on either one of those kids.
Yeah,
and for some reason.
Who else did Houston have? I mean, Houston was a dumb.
Oh no, they're terrible. They're terrible, but
you can't. It's kind of hard to make a diamond out of coal. It's got to take a lot of.
No. It's tough to see what he's got being on that team. There's no doubt, but I just think both of those. I'm just saying I think both of them are overvalued.
Do I think Tanner McKee is a first-round draft choice? No, but would I take him ahead of a Will Levis or Anthony Richardson? Hell yeah, in a heartbeat.
I like him more than those guys. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think Tanner McKee is probably in that third round area where he's
really third round.
I think he's going to have a very good combine. Yes, I do.
Third round. Wow, that's okay. I like it. That's a little bit higher than I've got him, but
yeah,
if somebody needs quarterbacks, that which a lot of teams do, that can, once they start going, people have to make their moves. So three guys actually that I really like, of course, that everybody does. Will Anderson Jr. I love that kid. I think he might be the first pick taken, despite some people feeling like he dropped off a little bit this year. I just think he was targeted more and protections were rolled to him more, as they should be. I've got no question marks about him. And then obviously both the Clemson boys, Miles Murphy and Breezy. I've loved both of them since their freshman year. So they definitely should come out, because I would take them on any of those three guys on my team in a second. But let's talk about the transfers here. We've gotten some guys that have made decisions and found new homes. Probably the biggest one that happened since we last talked was, Hartman finalizing the Notre Dame deal. We figured that was going to happen. What did you think about him deciding to jump ship from Wake Forest? And what do you think about him playing for Notre Dame? I want to give my take first off. I know he had some medical things this year, but I got to be honest, when I saw him on the field, I wasn't as impressed as I was last year. Do you think it was due to the medical?
It could be. I mean, maybe Dave Clawson just wants to move on too as well. I mean, the problem I have with him at Notre Dame is, yeah, he's a good quarterback, but once again, Notre Dame doesn't have receivers to throw to. And now Michael Mayer's gone. So was he going to throw to himself? I mean, I don't understand what the thought process is there.
But does he upgrade the position, in your opinion?
Oh, hell yeah. I mean, that bar is pretty low, but yeah, do I think he upgrades it? Yes.
But yeah, I mean, he's better. He's better than Pine. I mean, he's better.
Oh, yeah.
He's better than Buckner.
Yeah.
So I do think he's better than those two kids. My question mark is the freshman coming in. I'm not sure I'd be real happy if I was that kid. And they probably sold, Marcus Freeman and company sold me a bill of goods how I could come in and compete for the starting job as a freshman. And he ain't going to win that job. I mean, this kid's played 4 years at quarterback. You think some freshman kid who's never taken a snap is going to beat him out?
I know. I thought the same thing.
So, don't you think that would piss him off?
Well, not only that, you're bringing Lloyd Carr's grandson in next year too, as well, or like not, in 2024. So, I mean, it's not like you've created, all they've done is basically bought themselves some time, and that's about it.
Yeah. I'm just saying, if I was that kid,
I'd be upset. I'd be upset.
I'd be upset. I'd be like, you told me that I was going to compete with these guys you had. I mean, I'm sure they didn't tell him, oh, we're going to get Wake Forest's Heisman Trophy quarterback. I mean, I just don't think that was. I just have a hard time believing that was told to this kid. And I'm obviously talking about Kenny Minchey, the kid from here in Tennessee.
Yeah.
Who was a top, pretty close to a top 10 quarterback in the country, and the number 3 overall prospect in the state of Tennessee. I don't know. I would be concerned if I were him, and I'd be pissed off. But let's talk about some of these other guys that have found homes and made their move. I want to get your thoughts on Florida State. I think has ripped this portal up. Getting Fentrell Cypress from Virginia, the top, one of the top 3, top 2, maybe the top corner in this whole portal. Getting him, and then also grabbing Jaheim Bell from South Carolina. What did you think about what Florida State has done so far, and what do you think about those 2 dudes?
Great pickups. I mean, honestly, fantastic job. I think the biggest problem Florida State has going into next year's depth, but I mean, you look at the way they closed out the year. I think they're going to be walking in top 10 preseason next year, and really on the back of their quarterback, who really has improved so much. Yeah. And now you've got them a tight end. They're stronger at the corner position. I mean, honestly, they've really had a strong. I mean, heck, you got the Fiske kid coming out of Western Michigan too, as well, to come and play down lineman for him. I mean, he's already enrolled, ready to go. So, yeah, I mean, that is impressive to say the least. The one thing that shocked me, and I want to get your opinion on this, is not what they're receiving, but what they're losing. And that is South Carolina and Oklahoma State. What is going on with those 2 programs right now?
I have no idea, and I'm so glad you brought that up, because I was just thinking that when I mentioned Jaheim Bell's name. South Carolina had a big year and finished the season so strong, beating 2 top 5 teams 2 weeks in a row, destroying Tennessee down in Columbia, and then beating their nemesis, Clemson. And what happens? There's a mass exodus. Jaheim Bell, who I already mentioned, who's the number 8 overall player in the portal. Then they also have the number 9 overall player in the portal, and Jordan Birch, who was one of their top recruits of all time. 5-star, number 2 overall D tackle, number 1 player in the state of South Carolina. Hell, he's from Columbia. How do you let the kid from Columbia go? I'm just so confused. And that's not where it ends. I mean, I'm trying to think. Corey Rucker, Mario Anderson, Trey Knox, Marshawn Lloyd, the running back from South Carolina, who's now at USC. I just don't understand what's happening. Why do you think all these guys are taking off out of there?
Honestly, when you're sitting there thinking, I mean, maybe is a lot of these kids were Will Muschamp recruits. And now
they stuck around for the coaching change.
I know. That's what doesn't make any sense. I honestly do not understand it at all. Like, it makes 0 sense to me. I mean, they've lost 13 guys, 13 off a team that went 8-5.
Yeah. And played a good bowl game against Notre Dame. Was ahead. I mean, I'm just very confused by that. And then also, Oklahoma State, that's a team that usually keeps their players around. And I'm kind of shocked about that. It's not like they have instability at the coaching position. What do you think about what's going on with Oklahoma State? Why do you think they're losing dudes?
I cannot figure it out if my life depended on it. I mean, the one name that really kind of shocks me they lost out on was Bryson Green. His brother played for the Gophers and then transferred to Houston. He and his twin brother both played for Oklahoma State, and now Bryson's moving on to Wisconsin in a much more retooled, high-powered offense. And I think, honestly, that's a huge move for the Badgers, like gigantic. This kid is a very good talent.
Yeah, and the Badgers also picked up a bunch of recruits this last 2 weeks. They got Tanner Mordecai, the quarterback out of SMU. Lot of good things happening up there in Badger country. Another kid that I want to talk to you about from the portal that's made a move. Obviously, a lot of guys have already decided on where they're going, and that's at the quarterback position. Devin Leary, the kid from NC State who got injured this season, really did not go as well as planned, but he's going to Kentucky. And it's weird because he kind of reminds me a little bit of Will Levis for some reason. What do you think about that move? I'm not saying in a bad way. I'm just saying in just the way they play. I don't know why.
Style, demeanor. No,
Yes.
It's funny you mentioned that because when that happened, I kind of started laughing, thinking the exact same thing.
Okay, yeah. Good. I thought I was crazy for a second.
No, you're spot on. You're spot on. I mean, don't get me wrong. Do I like Leary more than I like Levis? Yeah, but I mean, at the end of the day, Kentucky's going to upgrade that offensive line situation, which was not good this year. I mean, it was freaking bad.
Yeah, no, it was a struggle. They struggled to run the ball. They struggled to pass protect. It was a struggle for the whole team down the stretch. But I think that's a good move for them. Picking up Devin Leary. I mean, I think that upgrades their quarterback position tenfold, and he's the immediate starter without a doubt. I also liked the move of Hudson Card, the quarterback at Texas, who transferred to Purdue. I think that was a great move for this young man. What did you think about his choice?
Spot on. I'm in 100% agreement with you. I mean, that was the worry when they hired Ryan Walters, what they would do. And honestly, I've been very impressed what is happening at Purdue football right now and people that they've brought in. I mean, they're going to still keep that tradition that Purdue has had it offensively. Really good hires overall. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how they retool because they lost a lot of good quality there. They don't have the receiver depth that they once did. But bringing a guy like Hudson Card is a real coup for Ryan Walters on this new staff.
Yeah, I agree. We talked already about Lloyd going to USC. I mean, they're hitting the portal hard. Again, they got the wide receiver out of Arizona. They got the corner, Roland Wallace from Arizona. This is just Anthony Lucas, the D lineman out of A&M. USC is just real portal heavy these past 2 years, and they seem to be doing it again. Who else has stuck out to you in the last couple of weeks that we haven't talked about before that's made a move? I think my last one that I was going to talk about was Dominique Lovett, the wide receiver that went from Missouri to Georgia.
Yeah.
Who else sticks out to you?
Georgia got somebody else too as well that I was pretty impressed with because Georgia, I mean, outside of JT,
they didn't take anybody last year.
Yeah, I mean,
no one.
The year before they had JT Daniels, and they had who was that corner from Clemson that Clemson kind of rolled off that went pro.
Yeah, I know you're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, other than that, I mean, Georgia,
Kendrick, I think
that's it.
Yeah.
I think they've really upgraded. They're finding if they're using it like free agency, they're finding places that fit guys. I think people are going to be afraid to do wholesale changes unless you're a new coach coming in like Lincoln Riley to do wholesale changes after what we saw from Michigan State last year. I mean, they were just not good. I mean, it's not like you can plug and play and these guys can all come together. You just roll the football out there. They still got to be able to live in that locker room, which they spend 95% of their time in. They got to get along. And I think that was a big problem, not only there, but I mean, heck, look at Texas A&M.
Yeah, that was a shit show.
Yeah.
There's no doubt. But they also, Georgia, speaking about, also picked up the wide receiver from Mississippi State, Ra Thomas.
That's who I was thinking of, Ra Thomas. That
was another big pickup. So, yeah, they've used it. And, they got no one last year. And same thing with, the Buckeyes haven't really used the portal that much. They got McAllister, came with Jim Knowles from Oklahoma State. And the kid from Arizona State, neither one of them really were, huge contributors, but McAllister played and started, and we got the one game at running back for the kid out of Arizona State. But they did pick up Jihad Carter out of Syracuse, who I think is a huge pickup for the Buckeyes. I mean, I think this kid's an upgrade over Ronnie Hickman, honestly.
Agreed, 100% agreed. I think he was really people didn't talk about Jihad Carter as much as they should have this year. He was really vital on that Syracuse defense.
Yeah, I agree. What did you think? Last one for me on this particular topic, and that's the quarterback out of Kent State who transferred to UCLA, Colin Schlee. What do you think about him, and what did you think about UCLA signing him?
It was funny you bring that up because there was a lot of names being kicked around to go out there. Nobody was really talking about Colin Schlee that much.
No.
I mean, you look at the type of offense they ran at Kent. I think this is going to be an easier transition working with Chip Kelly. I think it's going to be a little more run than he's used to. But I think the transition process is going to be a lot easier for him as a whole.
Yeah, I think so too. But it's interesting. Before we get out of here, I just want to ask you real quick, anybody else that is still in the portal that, you are really interested on where they're going? I mean, I know we got Sam Heward, the quarterback from Washington. We've got the offensive tackle from Alabama, who was kind of actually surprising to me that Damian George, who's transferring out of Bama. Spencer Sanders is still out there. Who is it that you see that's still available that might be able to really help somebody?
Well, I honestly, I think the bigger issue is going to be this is just round one. People forget round two is going to happen after spring ball is done. I mean, that's where I think you're going to see some position battles, and I think it's becoming harder for coaches because, yeah, you want to come out of spring ball with a dedicated, starting 22 and have your 2 and 3 deeps already put in place. Yeah, now they can't do that.
Yeah,
they got to hold on to that damn thing till maybe part of the season, and it's hard to prepare for a year when, at the drop of a dime, you could see somebody jump out and go to the portal.
Yeah, no, I agree. But do you think anybody that's left out there that hasn't signed is even going to help somebody at this point? I mean, I'm trying to think about, besides those guys I mentioned, I guess, I don't know if you saw the wide receiver from Kent State signed with Penn State.
Yeah.
I think that was yesterday.
Cephas.
Yeah, Dante Cephas.
Yeah, I don't really see anybody out there quite yet that could be that create that kind of cataclysm. I think we're just going to see more change come spring ball. I mean, there's some moves that still just kind of like scratch my head. Why did they happen? Like Tommy Brockermeyer, his dad was an offensive lineman at Texas, was a first or second round draft choice. He was an Alabama commit. Now after 1 year, he's going to TCU.
Yeah.
I just, there's a lot that just kind of like scratch my head and where they're going. I mean, I love seeing Dante Thornton going from Oregon to Tennessee. I think him and Brew McCoy are really going to take that to a whole new level, especially with Milton, who's got a cannon for an arm.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you brought that up because I completely forgot about that. But I thought that was a really good move, both for Tennessee and for Thornton. I think he's a kid that will benefit from Josh Heupel's offense. So
yeah,
we'll see what happens there. But I do think that was a good move for both parties involved. What else, man? 2022 is done and over with. What did we miss? What did we not talk about?
Honestly, I think we've hit it all. Now we got to start talking about next year, and I think you'd be foolish not to put Georgia number 1 preseason looking at their schedule next year. I mean, my God. I mean, it's pretty freaking easy.
Their schedule is so ridiculous. I mean, how they do not get criticized for that out of conference schedule baffles me. I don't get it.
I mean, their best non-conference game is at home against UAB.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of what I'm talking about. I don't understand how no one cares. to me, it's just a brutally easy schedule. I mean, besides the Tennessee game on the road, I don't see them. I don't really even see them having a possibility of losing any of those games, and that's without even knowing who the quarterback's going to be.
Maybe Ole Miss, maybe. I just honestly, I look at that schedule and I look at 2 games, and that's the entire year because, I mean, they're going to run through everybody else. I mean, Ole Miss at Sanford Stadium, and they got to go to Neyland. Otherwise, mark them down now because I don't see anybody beating them in that schedule.
Yeah, no, and it's not like going to the Grove in Oxford is like the hardest place in the world to play.
Yeah,
I think they'll be able to handle that one. So, yeah, I mean they're the obvious favorite. The Buckeyes are going to have some question marks, especially at the quarterback position. We're gonna be watching that, and that's one of the things we'll talk about in the upcoming weeks is the the upcoming quarterback battles that'll exist. That's always one of our favorite things to discuss. Is which battles are where and who we think will win them. We've got the Senior Bowl coming around just a couple of weeks. We got the Combine coming up. We'll have pro days getting started. We got a whole slew of things about to happen. What about the high school All-American games? Anything stick out from that you saw?
I really didn't pay much attention to it because I've been just so dialed into college football as a whole. I think it's going to be interesting to see. I think you're going to see more and more kids getting in early than you've ever seen before. They want to get that experience, get that spring ball practice in, because to get their clock running as quickly as possible.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a smart move for them.
Yeah,
and I think it only helps get them up and rolling. I just. I keep seeing more and more of this CJ Stroud's coming back stuff, and I just don't believe it.
I don't buy it.
I don't buy it at all, and I don't understand why people are throwing it up on social media like they are. I don't see there's any way that he comes back, but I hope they're right.
I just hope he makes the best decision for himself. If he decides to come back, God bless him. I personally, if I were him, I wouldn't.
No, I wouldn't either, but I think he should do whatever the hell he wants to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the thing, is that at some point we are going to see somebody stay because one of these schools is going to have their collective open up the checkbook and just be like, listen, we need this guy next year. He probably wants to go to the draft. Can we give him anything close to what he may make in his first year? Because that's really all you have to do is if you can match, what their first year total salary would be, including the signing bonus, maybe 5-6 million. I mean, hell, they're giving this kid Nico $8 million to come to Tennessee. I wouldn't be shocked to see it, James.
Well, I mean, that's going to be the hard part is some of these collectives. I mean, Nico's coming in, but people are already penciling in Milton. But if you're going to be paying this kid that much damn money, don't you want to see his ass play?
No, and he's already here. He practiced with the team, and that's something that's really I didn't even realize was happening. But some of these kids are coming and practicing with the teams now because they're allowed to before the bowl games.
Yeah,
they're not allowed to play, but they were. Nico practiced with the team prior to the Orange Bowl, and then was on the sideline at the game, and that just seems weird to me. But whatever. I mean, to each his own. I guess they were enrolling in January, but they didn't enroll yet. I don't know how that works. What if he gets hurt at practice? I don't know. It's kind of strange, but I think I agree with you. I think that's going to be very interesting to see. I mean, Milton won the MVP of the Orange Bowl. He beat Vandy 56-0. I don't see how you can go and put some kid who's never thrown a pass in over another guy who's been playing college football for 5 years.
Yeah, no, I agree with you 100%.
So we'll have to keep our eye on that. Maybe I'll have to go over to practice some and see what the hell's going on, because I want to see how many reps each one of them's getting, and whether they're going to give each one a 50% chance to be the starter.
Yeah.
So we'll see, but we got a lot to talk about coming up. Obviously, the draft, the Combine, the Senior Bowl, everything that goes on with that. Honestly, I love college football more than anything, but I love the Senior Bowl and the Combine and the draft very close to as much.
Yeah.
So
Well,
it's
I mean, you get to finally see these guys get more than a few reps against each other. I mean, now you get to see a lot more in detail where guys that you don't get to see as much really bug out. Like guys like the Penning kid, that from Northern Iowa last year we talked about quite a bit. The Zion Johnson who ended up from Boston College who ended up playing for the San Diego Chargers. I mean, a lot of guys we talked about. I mean, heck, Christian Watson. I mean, his stock is only going to get better. The way he closed the year for the Packers, I think this kid's got the sky's the limit of where he could go.
the Chargers. What the hell was that? I knew it was going to happen. I just felt like it. I'm like, they're up 27-0, and they can't get a first down. I'm like, this just doesn't look good to me. I'm like, they're missing 3 offensive tackles. I don't know. Something's going on in football now when you have a 30-point lead and you can't win. That to me is showing you that the rules are all, bent on the offense's favor right there.
Well, the thing that impressed me the most is Trevor Lawrence just never gave up.
No, that's true. That's true.
I was really impressed with how that guy just dug deep and brought them back. I mean,
it's a tale of two halves. I mean, he was horrible in the first half, and he closed it with that touchdown to Evan Ingram, and then in the second half, he lit it up. So kudos to him. But I think this is more on the Chargers coaching staff than it is on the Jaguars. I mean, I was a defender of this dude because I was like, everybody wants to see him fired. I don't understand it. He took the team to the playoffs. He's had mucho injuries. He's been able to figure out ways to win without, Bosa, without Khalil Mack, without Derwin James, without, J.C. Jackson. That just goes on and on and on. Both the receivers were down. I'm like, they kept winning. I just don't understand how you could fire him. Guess what? I don't defend him anymore. You lose that game and you blow that lead, you should get fired. That's embarrassing.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Absolutely.
Embarrassing.
I mean, quite frankly, I turned it off at the half because I'm like, this is just going to be a shit show. And then all of a sudden I kept getting freaking alerts saying I should be watching the game. And I'm like, what the hell just happened? So I'm like trying to play catch up in the second half. And I'm like, this could be the coming out party of Trevor Lawrence in his NFL career. Just imagine when he gets more talent on the specialty positions.
No, that's a huge point. I mean, did they upgrade what they had the year before? Yes.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm still looking at it like, God, he's doing this with Marvin Jones and Zay Jones, the Jones brothers. I mean, what if he actually got Christian Kirk, who, everybody made fun of the Jaguars for signing him for $83 million. Well, hell, he's got over 1,000 yards and like 8 to 10 touchdowns. I mean, he almost looks like he's worth $83 million out there. So Trevor Lawrence is making him look good.
The guy who I think doesn't get nearly the credit he deserves, but kind of fits in that Hunter Renfrow category of the good slot guy is Evan Ingram, who really never got a chance to show himself up in New York. But I mean, he's not really a blocking tight end. He's kind of like a JV version of Shannon Sharp, where you line him up at the slot. He creates big mismatches, and he's got incredible hands and speed, but he's not going to be a blocking guy, a guy you want on the line of scrimmage that can get a good chip off or help run block downfield.
He's a wide receiver. The only reason they don't reclassify his position is they don't want to pay him wide receiver money. And in New York, he had some chances. He just couldn't catch the damn ball. So he's gotten a little better.
Well, he was always hurt there too, as well. I mean,
he was always dropping it. They would throw it off his damn chest, time and time again. But he's definitely improved, and I think that's Trevor Lawrence making all these guys look better. And then Travis Etienne, who didn't even play last year.
I know.
It's like having another first round draft pick added to your draft class from this year because he wasn't there last year. So. We'll talk about the guys we think are going to break out and have big seasons. We talked about the juniors today. but we'll talk about the rest of the underclassmen, excuse me, because most of them are sophomores. But we'll talk about the rest of the seniors and the other guys that we think are going to go in the draft, and we'll break it down by position like we always do, and give our analysis of our favorite dudes at each position on offense and defense. So, all right, go watch some NFL, man, because college football is over.
All right, man.
All right, keep them
Talk
up,
to you.
and we'll talk to you next week.
All right, man. Later.
All right.